I had a lot of great research of the Jordan family. So I based their look on their actual family photos.
I love this movie so much. I saw it in theaters right when it came out with all my friends. I have a friend who's like the biggest sneakerhead I've ever met. So he was freaking out. It's great. You crushed
So,
it.
I know
um,
it's funny because it's like we're all sneakerheads and there's like one sneaker in the film.
I know. There's some in the background, I guess. There's some in the office, but yeah. Uh, the first thing I guess I wanted to ask you was kind of towards the beginning, like what kind of information do you typically get or like to get from a script? And then where do you like to kind of build out from there?
Yeah, I think when I read a script, I'm trying to understand like where we are and like who each character is. So I think after I read the script, if like if I'm unclear about like who a character is, I always talk to the writer, director, and get more context because that helps me with designing costumes. And then also my research, like as I'm reading a script and I start doing research about, the characters or the time period, the styles, like that helps a lot, just to really help me like visualize and build out the world, and you can get a lot from reading the page, and if this script was really well written, and if you have a really well written script with really like full characters, interesting nuanced characters, you can get a lot of inspiration just from the page.
Yeah. I loved, something that everyone is kind of in the same office environment, at least a lot of the main guys. And yet they all are dressed to kind of fit their very different personalities. And
Yeah.
I love it. And I was wondering, like, where do you kind of take research and take photos and video and then kind of heighten it to express that they are very different people and different characters?
I mean, yeah, and it's really just doing tons of research from like different sources. And again, like, understanding like the characters and the notes that I had about the characters, like, Sonny's a basketball scout. So he's not wearing suiting, he's comfortable. He's a dad, he's a basketball coach. What do basketball coaches wear? A lot of polos, you know what I mean? And like maybe throw a members only jacket on him. Great, like, and then we have that guy. And so that was fun. And then, Rob Strasser, the notes I got about him as the actual person is like, he didn't really like wearing suiting and he was very relaxed, in his suiting and his dress. And he actually wore Hawaiian shirts. And so I was like, you wore Hawaiian shirts? Amazing. I'm going to throw that in there, on the Saturday, like brainstorming session when they're designing the shoe. And like, I was like, perfect. And then, because he doesn't like suiting, yeah, I was like, I'm putting him in 3-piece suits, like late 70s, early 80s 3-piece suits. Because, by the time we're in like 84, so we're moving towards like the mid to late 80s where like, suiting is changing and it's getting really slick and like cool and fashion forward. And we're, talking like amazing Armani suits, are starting to emerge during this time. So I got to play around with those, on David Falk, he's wearing these like trapezoid shaped Armani suits. And it's like his shapes are very severe, like his suiting is like really fashion forward. And then, on Howard White, he's also wearing Armani, but his Armani suits are a little bit more classic. You know what I mean? So, but it's still elevated. It's still really, really nice. He looks nice every time you see him. Ben as Phil Knight, he's wearing the quintessential like 80s suits with the wide lapels. And he's another person that doesn't really care about suiting that much. He's just wearing it so he doesn't get fined. He throws the sneakers on with his suit. But I wanted to make sure his fabrics felt very vintage and had texture. And when you see him come on screen, the texture of those suits really, really pop, and it's not as slick, and so, yeah, I just had a lot of fun just like playing around with like fabrics and textures and silhouettes, like based on personality, based on character, based on notes that I had from my research, based on notes the researcher gave me about each real person, and looked at tons of catalogs and fashion magazines, documentary footage, of Phil Knight, news footage of Phil Knight during that time. And, and films, movies, like I base a lot of David Fox look on Wall Street and the vibe of Wall Street, during that time, and GQ magazines during that time, and just really had a lot of fun with it. Like GQ was a huge help in terms of understanding what suiting was doing in 84, 83, 82, like really understanding what was actually out there, for men, for professional men who had a little money to spend.
Yeah. And I spoke a few months ago to your music supervisor, who was kind of talking about the songs and was saying, like, I think it was My Adidas, and she was like, that wasn't from the era that came out like a year later, but it was too good to put in the movie. Did you have anything like that with wardrobe, where you were finding stuff that was like maybe they wouldn't have worn in 84, but you just thought it was perfect?
Well, yeah, the Phil Knight costume that Ben wears at the end of the film that ends up on the poster, like that's not period correct at all. That's like late 80s, early 90s vibes right there. And it worked because it's the end of the film. You know what I mean? And it could have been any year, and we're just going to say that. But it's just such a cool look. Like, who cares, right? And that was an on the fly kind of a deal. And I had to just like let go of the fact that it wasn't period correct and just go with what the idea and the vision that Ben had for the end credits. Sometimes you just have to surrender and just like be like, okay, it's not right, but it's going to look cool,
And then like you said, there's kind of one sneaker, but there's some others like in Phil Knight's office on the shelves and stuff. Like, where do you get those? Are you getting things from Nike, or are they harder to source? Like, how does that all come to be?
We got lucky because Blazers, they still make Blazers. So Peter Moore wears Blazers pretty much exclusively in the film. It's only him and Phil Knight that wear sneakers in the film, like consistently. Phil Knight's always in a running sneaker. The sneakers that Peter Moore wears and Phil Knight wears were actually still being sold on Nike's website. Like, they still have some of their original sneaker designs on the site that you can buy, and new and updated colors. So I was about finding the most neutral versions of those. And some of them we even painted. We had to paint the shoes that he wears with his running look. We had to paint those sneakers. We bought them in a neutral color, and we painted them to match the outfit. And it looks great. You never know. We had to paint the swoosh. We had to paint the black on the front toe and the back of the heel and the suede. And it worked out great. But yeah, like we didn't really need to feature that much in the film. I mean, the props department, I believe, in the set dressing department, I believe, sourced a lot of those sneakers. You can find a lot of the original ones on eBay, but they're in various states of falling apart. But Matt, at the end, as Sonny does wear, when he's running on the track, he does wear an actual pair from the period. Like, those are actually period correct. And they were just in good enough quality. I sourced them on eBay, and they were good enough quality to where he could actually wear them in the film and run a bit. And it ended up working out good because they were just beat up enough to signify that he's probably had them for a while and he doesn't really care about them. So we didn't have to like age them, because sometimes it's hard to get the aging that good. It's something that's really been lived in, so that was cool. That was a cool moment.
That's cool. I hope you weren't like caught in a bidding war for those on getting eBay. Sounds like.
No, I mean, Jordan 1s are ridiculous. Like, the Jordan 1s, they made them for the film. The art department and props had to make them because, getting them that brand new is impossible. And with all the, it's just, it's impossible. They've re-released them so many times. Original ones, like when they're selling them online, they're like minimum $25,000 starting bids, and they're not even in good shape, And so it was a wise decision to make those and recreate them.
That's wild. And then also, key to the film obviously are the Jordans. Like, they're kind of the only people outside of the office culture, I guess, that we see. They're kind of coming in. And can you talk about how you wanted to dress them kind of in contrast to everybody else?
Yeah, I had a lot of great research of the Jordan family. So I based their look on their actual family photos. And their style, because when you start seeing photos of people over and over during a time period, I think particularly during that time. I think we have many more options when it comes to clothing now because of fast fashion. And, back then I think people just repeated a lot of stuff, so there was a lot of photos of James Jordan kind of wearing the same thing. He's in like a sweater vest and tie and a suit, and so I was like, okay, that's his vibe when he's out. He likes to wear like a sweater vest, tie, and suit, and so I kind of just played around with that. And then there were the casual photos of him. He's in like short sleeve shirts and jeans and, pro wing boots, and so I just wanted to showcase both sides, them at home and them out, in the world, celebrating their son, going on meetings, things like that. So a lot of the photos we had of them were celebratory, of them at his games or, going to church as a family or whatever. And so that was really cool. And they're from North Carolina. So there's a different sensibility. They're a Black family from North Carolina. There's a different way you dress when you go travel a place, you know what I mean? Like during that time you would dress up when you go travel, so I just really wanted to show all that, like in all these spaces that they're in, that they're like dressing to be in those spaces. They're dressing up, with the exception being when Sonny comes to their home, and they're in their environment and they're very relaxed and casual. So yeah, it was fun being able to show that contrast for the Jordan family.
Was it weirder or like challenging in any way to dress Michael, because you basically just see his like silhouette and back and stuff for most of the movie? Like, I guess more focus might go on his wardrobe in moments like that.
Yeah, I mean, he just had to be dressed, and I had to dress him like everybody else, even though we don't see his face. We had to do a fittings. We had to, I had to make very clear decisions about, okay, when he goes to see Adidas, I want him in this style leather jacket and this kind of a button down and slacks. And, when we are in, Oregon at Nike, I want him in a sport coat and slacks and a tie. I had to be very specific about what he was wearing in each place and why. And a lot of that was based on outfits that Michael Jordan actually wore as a high schooler and teenager. And just being like, okay, this was his vibe when he would go to games. So he would kind of dress up when he went to games. And this is him just chilling with his friend, like, sitting on a car or whatever, and just really playing around with that. The only thing we didn't get to show is like him actually in his house, which would have been a completely different look. So he would have been like in one of those like ringer style tees or something like that. And like those varsity tees and jeans and like Adidas sneakers, like, cause that's what he wore. So like that would have been cool, but yeah, it was really cool just to like, he was another character, even though he didn't have lines and we didn't see him. I still had to dress him head to toe because I didn't know where the camera was going to be on him at any given moment. Even though they weren't showing his face, they shot over his shoulder, they shot his arm, they shot, so everything still had to be right.
Yeah. And then I think this is probably going to be my last one for you, but I'm curious, like almost everyone in the cast of this movie is like a writer or director or producer, like used to like having a lot of input probably on their projects. Like, did that translate to your collaboration with them? Like, did a lot of people have opinions or anything like that? No?
I was shocked. I honestly was shocked. I thought people were going to come in with like all these ideas and all these opinions. And, and because they're all super high in demand, amazing actors, I got Viola like the day before, so I'm getting them like super last minute. So I'm like freaking out. I'm just trying to have everything I could possibly think of, that someone might request, no, like everybody was like, okay, you want me to wear that? Love it. Great. Like the fittings were easy. And it's like so rare that, and not that they didn't have any opinions. They just were like, this feels right. And I'm really grateful for that. And I think it's just, and also like when you walked into our fitting room, all the characters were up on the wall with all the research photos. So as they're getting fit, they're looking at the research like, okay, and so I think that was a good move, on our part. It's just putting all the research up. So everybody knew what we were doing and everybody understood like who the characters were and who these real people were and like where we're trying to go. And the research was always a starting point and we would push it a bit further. So I'm really blessed because I was nervous. I mean, I think the most notes I got from people was like Chris Tucker. He's like, I just need to look sharp because Howard looks sharp and Howard's my friend and he looks sharp. So I got to look sharp. And I'm like, okay, I got you. Like he was just adamant about that. And, Ben was just like, I just need to look like Phil Knight. I just want to wear what he wore. If he wore that, I'll wear it. I'm like, okay, cool. I didn't really get any notes from Viola. She was just like, she's not really into clothes. She was like, this is great. I think Peter Moore, was like, I should be in a black turtleneck. And then I was like, okay, you're not going to like it. And we put it on. He's like, you're right. I don't like it. And then we changed it. And then he got really cool, like print on print and like fun colors. And it was way better. He's very like quintessential, like 80s, and more than anyone else, which is fun. So yeah, like they were an awesome group. Chris Messina, he just was like, more, like he liked, he's like, don't I need a tie clip or a tie bar for this? Like, he would ask for more accessories. Don't I need different cufflinks or cufflinks? And like, yeah, like, so like once they got into it, they were like asking, some of them were like Chris Messina were asking for more and that was fun. But initial crazy notes and stuff, no, I'm so grateful. Like such a good group of actors. Great cast.
That's amazing. Awesome. Well, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.